social TV channel. This is a community-driven live TV channel that aims to provide information and understanding about our differently abled community, as well as those who live with disabilities, visible or invisible. And today, our topic is slow processing speed. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back. And welcome back. This show is produced by myself, Brigitte Limbanda. I enjoy creating great online storytelling experiences for brands, entrepreneurs, creatives, authors, and social good communities. On this show, we focus on conversations that matter in the special needs and disabilities world. We hope to encourage, to inspire, and provide useful information. We invite you to share your stories and help us raise awareness about dealing with different. My co-host is Mary Elizabeth Jackson. She's an award-winning author of the Poolicious children's books series. She's a wife and also the mother of 3 young people who inspire her. Mary is also a special needs and disabilities advocate, and she lives in Nashville in the USA. And I am right down under on the tip of Africa in Cape Town, South Africa. So do let us know where in the world you are joining us from. Mary, welcome to the show.
Hi, Brigitte. Thanks for having me. We are very excited about doing this show because we're both very passionate about being advocates of disabilities of all sorts and all kinds, because there are such a huge variety of disabilities, and a lot of them you can't see. You can only experience with somebody. So, when I read this article that we're going to focus on today, this slow processing speed, when I read it, I think I messaged you immediately and said, oh my gosh, we have to talk about this, because I think this is one of those highly undiagnosed things that goes, kind of under the radar for a lot of kids. And I think probably for, a fair amount of adults as well. And so you and I are very much about advocating and being kind of those avenues of information for people to inform them of something they may not have ever even heard of before. Because I knew that we were experiencing pretty much something like this with one of my children, but nobody in all the interesting thing is this: no one in all the years of therapy that she's ever had or been through, or even my other child, this particular title for this has never ever come up. Isn't that fascinating? It's never even been tested for.
I know, isn't that so weird? I mean, when we first spoke about, and we haven't done this show in a little while because life has happened.
Right. I lost my dad, and in just life. Yes. So we're getting back onto the show.
And so we've got Dr. Parviz Hyatt, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He's saying, what is the remedy for anxiety and how to avoid drugs? And that is possibly something that we can touch on, if not today, definitely in another show. So thank you, Dr. Parviz Hyatt, for joining us.
I would say to him, like, a very quick, free fix or help with one of those is definitely meditation is a ginormous help with anxiety, huge. And learning those tools for that, and mindfulness. And that's easy enough for people to Google on the internet. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube for mindfulness meditations, and even some of the music that's on there, because I use some of that with my children. But for my kids, I know for anxiety, I don't want to go to medication first. So I definitely, I would be keeping I would be keeping a journal for whoever that person is with anxiety to see what their triggers are. Are their triggers food? Are their triggers emotional coming from somewhere? Are there triggers environmentally? And then you might need to see a doctor if it's so much that these things don't take care of it, because it could be, hereditary, genetic, some sort of a neurotransmitter or something with the brain. But a quick help is definitely meditation and the deep breathing. Deep breathing allows us to center ourselves and kind of come back into our bodies. And then we can start to kind of go, okay. And like every time it wells up, just kind of keep breathing, doing that breathing, and ask those questions. Where is this coming from? It's a very good self-help kind of thing to find out what is triggering the anxiety that I'm having. Because sometimes it's triggers that it's like the farthest thing from your mind that you would even know or even think of to trigger you,
I just want to reiterate what you said there. It's a good thing to have a diary, to keep a record of what you are experiencing. And if you can try and find a pattern of what your triggers are, that's a good start.
It's
So
an important start, because no matter what kind of anxiety you have and no matter what's going on in your life, you got to, instead of taking a pill, which some people need them, I'm not disregarding any of that, but in any case, no matter what it is, we really do need to figure out about ourselves so that we can manage ourselves better. What, medicated or not medicated, you need to be able to understand, why am I doing this? Where is this coming from? And so then a lot of things are easily remedied. Not everything, but that there are things that are easily remedied. And we should probably do a show focusing on that.
I think that's a great idea. But to get back to our conversation for today, can you briefly describe what slow processing speed is all about and how it's diagnosed?
Yes. So slow processing speed, it's not a formal learning disability. So that's I think a lot of times it goes misdiagnosed or undiagnosed. But it can play a part in learning and attention issues like dyslexia, ADHD, or ADD. That's why part of what I've read and researched about is that there is that it's so intertwined that I think there are children who are diagnosed, and even adults, with ADD or ADHD, and actually there's this other component, which is the slow processing speed that goes with it. So it can play a part in learning, like I said, learning and attention issues, also in dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and auditory processing disorder. It means that a child cannot keep up with the pace of the classroom learning itself. And here's some examples. Their last to finish test, they have problems following direction. And at home, slow processing speed means that homework that takes forever to do, frustration with written assignments, and difficulty getting ready for school in the morning. That's the one that kind of really rang the bell for me with one of my children, because it's been an ongoing battle for so many years that it disrupts the whole family when you have a child who, no matter what you say to them, they can't move any faster. So being old school like I am and you are, we were probably not raised. I know I was not raised with a lot of patience, because during those time periods when we were kids, there was not a lot of patience that was given. It's like, go now, do this, do what I say now. And we have all these kids, it seems like these today, that, and for a while, we can't use those old ways of training and thinking with these kind of kids, because if a child has slow processing speed, there's nothing you can do. And I witnessed it in my own home. All it does is create so much frustration and a killer of self-esteem in that child, and frustration on the parents' part. And it's not that they're lazy. I mean, I really thought that was part of the component for a while, was just kind of just being lazy. I got to do it on my own time. And it really is, there's really a diagnosis for it. I mean, it really is actually something that's going on inside of the child's brain. And it probably occurs more with children who already have an auditory processing, if they have an auditory processing issue, or kids who have like reading comprehension issues. And so there are kids who, when they read something, they're not going to comprehend it the way you or I do. They Everything doesn't go in the same way into the brain, and sometimes it takes longer for that understanding of it. So by the time they get down to take their test or write answers, their answers are not going to be correct. And sometimes it's because they don't even understand some of the words that are in there, because you know, all of us, probably most of us, have some sort of little something we've learned to cope with in life, right, to get us through. So I know, for the experience I've had with my own child, she learned to cope by reading all the words that she did know the definitions to, and not knowing the words, leaving those out and not really asking what do those words mean. So she wasn't getting all of the information in order to answer questions properly. If that
So, you know, the temptation, I guess, is always when you've got a child who may have slow processing speed, is to try and help them along, to try and speed up the process.
right.
And so I'd be interested to know, is this good for them? Is slow processing speed caused by anxiety? And if you try and help them along, are you worsening the anxiety for them?
You know, that's a good question. And I think that can be true. And I think every child is different. I know the less commands that are given, or less direction that's given, and it's like one at a time, and you build that time in. You know, in the morning, make sure that child gets up way earlier. If they're a slow riser and they're not ones that jump out of the bed ready to go, make sure they have that extra time so that nobody's yelling at them, and you give them that space. Okay, you have 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever it is to sit here and just take your time and get ready. And then when that buzzer goes off, because we do use an alarm, when that buzzer goes off, it's time to go downstairs and eat. So it's kind of like you have to block it out in very definitive ways. And if you can get into a routine like that with your child, or even an adult who's got this going on, everybody's going to be more successful in the whole situation. There's going to be less arguing. And another thing is to try and make these kind of kiddos more responsible for their time. You know, like, make them have an alarm that they set. Make them choose the time that they want to get up. How much time do they feel like they actually need to get ready? So with little kids, that's kind of hard, right? Because they really don't know how to monitor themselves yet. But if you see this going on as a parent, or a caregiver, whoever you are taking care of this child, I would go ahead and build in that extra time, get them up earlier, give them more time to just sit there. If they need to, it's almost like a waking up and having to really adjust to the world for a little while. And then I can pick up and I can go on and do what I need to do, you know? That has, letting her set her own alarm, giving her that extra time, has made this last summertime and year of school so far, it's so much smoother. It's like night and day.
So for me, what I can see from this is that it's the benefit of giving them some form of control, so that they don't feel they're out of control, or they don't feel that they're odd or weird or something wrong with them. So It's giving them some form of control back, but also it's validating who they are and what they may be suffering from. So you're not just ignoring it or pretending that it's not happening. So you're validating that this is the situation and this is how we deal with it, but you're giving them the control mechanism to manage it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it makes them feel like they're accomplishing something. Because you have to understand, they don't actually understand what's going on in their brain themselves unless they've been diagnosed and it's been explained to them. So it's very hard for a child to understand, why is everybody so mad at me? I can't move any faster than this. I mean, literally, they cannot do it. And it's like, so what's coming out of this? What positive is coming out of this? If everybody's grumpy, everyone's yelling at this child or children, depending on how many you have in the house, you know, everybody's mad when they're going to school. You're dropping off a kid at school with their head hanging down low. They're starting their entire day at school already in the pits. So what good are you doing if you don't educate yourself? That's part of advocacy as a parent. Part of advocacy as a parent is educating yourself on what's happening with your child or even yourself, and learning the tools of how to be more successful or take care of it, whether it requires medication or not, whether it requires some kind of therapy. I mean, that's our job, right? And it's our job to take and turn and teach that to this child or children so that they can learn how to self-regulate. They can learn how to get themselves out of it. This is true for any child. I mean, even our typical kids. We have to teach them tools to learn about themselves, to understand how they operate in this world so they can be more successful. Because one day they've got to go out and have jobs. The human beings that will go out and be able to work in the world, having a disability or not, because, disability does not mean you can't go out and be successful in this world. Absolutely, it doesn't mean that.
Yeah, that's why I like the term. I like the term differently abled.
Yes.
Because it doesn't mean you can't do stuff. It doesn't mean you can't function. It doesn't mean that you are less than. It just means you do it differently, and different is okay. It's okay to be different. And I think you
Absolutely.
need to emphasize that and reiterate that with your child over and over, to validate them and let them know that they don't have to fit into the box. They don't have to tick all the boxes. It's okay to do things the way they perceive it or do it if that's what suits them.
Right. Absolutely. And I think in a lot of circumstances we are stretching and growing what the boundaries are, what they have always been, how the box has been. So the box is taking different shapes these days, more and more, but it has to, because we have so much I have a cousin who has cerebral palsy. He was born that way, of course, and he went to college. He drives a car. He has a job. I mean, he's defied all logical reasoning and what the doctors even expected. So when I hear somebody say, I can't do that, or that person can't do that, I think about him. He's a huge inspiration. I mean, he's done it. He doesn't care what's going on. He's gone and done it. So I think we have to learn to accommodate, but also help everybody be able to integrate together. And let's all work together. Like, what are your gifts and what are your gifts and what are your talents and your abilities here and there? Let's make them all work together. Let's see what those are so we can bring those out in somebody and put them in that role or position or job or career or talent or creativity, some kind of creative kind of business.
So, Mary, what do you do if you discover that your child has slow processing speed, or even you have a slow processing speed? What are the next steps from there? What if the school that your child is in, the class that your child is in, if your teacher has never even heard of slow processing speed? How do
Right.
you move forward? How do you help your child? Because that's the first thing. If it's a child, how do you help your child, or how do you help your teacher help your child?
Right. Yeah. And it's a lot there, isn't that? All in that conversation you're saying, there's so many components to it. I think that whether a teacher is suspicious or you're suspicious, or even the pediatrician, a doctor, whatever that you see is suspicious about things. Okay, so there are tools that are used to assess the slow processing speed. Now, the Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children is, I don't know why I'm speaking like that, but children. But anyways, I know when it came out like that, but oh my goodness. So this is people in school, you're actually, even in like psychologists, if you go to centers that do testing for specifically for diagnosis and in the schools, they use this scale. It has 5 well, it's the Wessler 5, but it's subtest coding, cancellation, symbol search to assess the processing speed. So it'll give feedback about even different challenges with slow handwriting, I think, which goes along with it. There's kind of some categories that go along with it, but the NEPSI 2 provides a variety of measures to assess processing speed and fluency, including the speeded naming test and the word generation test. Let's see, there's educational testing such as the fluency measures on the Wyatt 3 and the Woodcock-Johnson 3 test achievement. We probably should write some of this down, like put it in our comments at the end of the show. Those are all helpful in determining whether slow processing speed affects the ability to complete simple academic tests in timely fashion. So those tests that I just mentioned are ones that you can request the school to do. You have a right to request that. You can go to a neuropsychologist who can do full testing that way. They're also, I mean, I would, in wherever you're living, I would check and see, do they have an autism center, like a foundation or something that might be able to put you in touch with people that can do this kind of testing on your child, or even as an adult. And these are the kind of tests that would give you feedback and data to support whether you or a child has the slow processing speed, and actually to what degree it is. Like, how many areas does it affect a child? You know, because you can have a child who makes straight A's, but then they have a comprehension processing issue. So they can do.
So there's different facets. There's different facets to this, and different degrees.
Yeah, because see, right back up here, because I'm reading, actually, I'm actually reading so that everything is correct, and we don't have all this typed up for people, but it can play a part in learning and attention issues like dyslexia, which, you know, is the switching of letters and words, and ADHD or ADD, which that means a specific diagnosis. But I know a lot of times with ADD or ADHD, there is an anxiety component that goes to it. And so sometimes kids get misdiagnosed with that, because you'd asked about that earlier. So definitely, when I had a child suffering from anxiety, they wanted to diagnose her with that, but it was really more of the anxiety that was creating the inability to focus than it was an actual ADD or ADHD. So it really does take finding the people, asking the school to do the testing. You know, Vanderbilt Hospital has a whole center here for this stuff. So a lot of parents will go down there and get their kids tested for these variety of things. You know, with my little guy, it was going to the center downtown and having him assessed. He was assessed for 5 hours to come up with the diagnosis.
Wow.
Yeah. And they have a psychologist look at him. They have, I mean, it's just a whole, you know, and sometimes these, you know, as soon as you know something's going on, I would send a note into your school and do everything that you can through email, so you have a trail, a paper trail, so that somebody can't ever come and say, oh, you didn't ask for this. You know what I mean? You can say, well, yes, I did. It's right here, July 21st, blah, 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 you know. But I would ask your school and say, you know, and we want to do things very diplomatically whenever you're doing anything that has to do with advocating for your child. It's not very helpful to go in and you're screaming and yelling, or you're stomping and you're, my kid needs this. You know, you have to save that for when services are denied and you know your child needs services. then you can bring out that kind of, you know, but when you're first going into this, if you suspect any of these things with your children, even dyslexia, because I know we had laws written here in the last couple of years for specific dyslexia testing in schools, and that children have the right by law to be tested for this if there was suspect of it. But, you know, you need to send a note, a letter into the teacher and say, okay, we are suspicious of this, or we have a feeling about this with our child. Our pediatrician has, you know, asked the pediatrician to check also, the pediatrician or a neurologist, you know, is verifying this with us, and we'd like the school to test our child for this. And you have every right to do that legally.
So that's a great place to start. Is first to, I just want to go back again. It's first to note down, so be observant. Notice what your child is struggling with. Keep a record of it. See what affects it. See, if you're telling your child to hurry up and they're just taking longer, note it down and note what activities they're struggling with, and then see if you can pick up a pattern, and then have your child evaluated or have yourself evaluated if you realize that this is a problem for you, because only once you identify it um, can you know how to move forward. And just, you were saying that it took you 5 hours of assessment, so be prepared for that. It's not a quick fix because you can't diagnose this kind of thing in 30 minutes. It's not possible.
No, it does take time, and then it takes time to get all the data back and everything like that. But for me personally, I would rather somebody take a longer time and get that data right and correct so that my child was not misdiagnosed or goes undiagnosed if there is an issue there. Now, there are a lot of people that don't like their kids, they don't want their kids to have a label. And I understand that. I have a lot of compassion for that. But I also understand that if it means my child getting the help that they need to be as successful as they can be in school or whatever environments they're in, sports, church, clubs, anything, that getting that label is the least of my concerns. Absolute least of my concerns, because my main goal is to make sure my children are successful and they have confidence and they feel good about themselves. Even if they have deficits, let's work on them and make them strengths.
So if you suspect that slow processing speed is what someone in your family has, where do you start? Do you start with your family physician or do you go and see a specialist?
Well, it kind of depends on, like, if your child already has been diagnosed, then you could go on to a specialist and say, I read up on this, or I came, like I did, I came upon this article and I was like, oh my gosh, this is, so now I will, take my child to a neuropsychologist who does complete emotional, social, academic testing to give an overall view of this particular processing disorder. So I would, because of where I am in the journey, I would take her and go ahead and I would make the appointment with a neuropsych and make sure your insurance covers it, or find out how much it's going to cost, because this stuff is not cheap and not all insurances cover all of these testing, this kind of testing. But I would, you could start with your pediatrician and say, we are suspecting this. These are kind of the signs that our child is showing. And then I would definitely get right with the school. I would ask for a meeting with the school psychologist and probably the special ed teacher, and even the child's classroom teacher, and say, can we have a meeting? Because I am suspicious that this may be going on with my child, or there's something. I just don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but I know it's off. Something's off. And ask for a meeting and go into the school and then sit down and talk to them about it and say, can we set up a meeting to talk about testing for my child? And you could do that even through email. You can email all of those people, put them on an email together and say, we are suspecting something like this. We're not really sure. Can we set up a meeting? Because you have to have a preliminary meeting to talk about what the issue is, or issues that you think and that maybe the school sees, and then talk about the testing that will be done, and then you have to sign off on all that before they can even start doing anything. So was that helpful? Did I make that clear about your answer?
Yes, you absolutely did.
Okay.
We're almost out of time for the show. So what I'd like to say to everyone that's watching us today, thank you for joining us live. Please share this. But if you've got any questions that relates to special needs, people that are differently abled or disabilities, and it's a topic that you'd like us to cover in this particular show, then please let us know in the comments. And we'll either research it or find someone that can talk about the topic. If there's something that you're passionate about that fits into the topic of special needs and disabilities, and you would like to be a guest on our show, then also please reach out to us in the comments. And so what we'll do after the show is the things that we've spoken about, we'll post those links in the comments for you so that you can look them up. Is there anything else you wanted to share with us before we close, Mary?
I would just say don't give up because a mother or father's instinct or caregiver's instinct really is invaluable. You know, when you know there's something, don't give up and try to be patient with your child or your children. Be patient with them, you know. And if you see that your child cannot take a lot of commands and follow a lot of direction, you know, I would have that looked into. And just don't give up. You're their voice. I mean, they can't talk, stand up for themselves. So you have to do it for them. And it empowers us as people, moms, caregivers, dad, it empowers us. And we actually end up growing into people that we never imagined we would.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with you. So, don't ignore the signals and signs. Be aware and don't always write off the symptoms that you see in your child as, as nothing. Do something. Be the parent, and
Be
don't be
proactive.
embarrassed about it. Be
Yeah,
proactive.
don't be embarrassed. It's not a weakness. It's not a weakness in a person. It isn't. It doesn't mean there's something they're broken. It just means that there is, it's just a little bit of something that, some things can just be easily corrected with therapies and help, and then it becomes a strength for a child, or they learn tools they can use the rest of their life that will help them be successful. And that's what we want in the end. That is the main goal, is to get them to be successful as much as they can in whatever's given to them in life. So we want them to be happy, thriving in the way that they are able to, because there's so many varieties, right? So there's not one size fits all. And just don't give up. And we can't sleep on the job. You can't take a nap ever.
Absolutely.
We don't get
be,
time
you know,
off.
be aware and take action. I think that's the take home.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you,
Thanks for
Bridget.
joining us, everyone. And we'll be back again next week with another episode of Special Needs, Differently Abled, and Disabilities. Thanks for joining us. And from me, Bridgetti Limband in Cape Town, it's goodbye for now.
Bye from Tennessee. Thanks.